Hello, everyone. Before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to remind you that my book, Drummers on Drumming, is available now on Amazon as both a paperback and an ebook. Based on the Big Fat Five segment of this podcast, where I sit down with my favorite drummers to discuss the 5 records and stories that shaped their approach to the instrument, this book is packed with insights from the drummers who redefined how we think about the modern drum set. You can grab your copy now by checking the link in this episode's show notes or simply searching Drummers on Drumming on Amazon. So thank you for all the support, and now let's get into the show. What is up? Welcome back to Big Fat Five, a podcast financially supported by Big Fat Snare Drum. My name is Ben Hilsinger, and this week's guest is Steve Durham. Steve is a drummer, musical director, and producer from London, UK, and he began playing drums at 8 years old and was out on the road by the time he was 14. Since then, he's worked with Louis Tomlinson of One Direction, Dermot Kennedy, Wolf Alice, Foals, Holly Humberstone, Aurora, Declan Mckenna, Marina and the Diamonds, and many more. He's a powerful and tasteful drummer who I actually just met in person a few weeks ago at Max Flanders' birthday party. It was quite the drummer fest, but meeting Steve was certainly a highlight of the evening. So I hope you enjoy the 5 records, plus a few honorable mentions that helped shape Steve Durham into the drummer he is today. Cheers. So, Steve, for this list, what was your criteria for an album to make the top 5 or even be on the list and then ultimately make the top 5?
Well, I kind of thought, I kind of looked at things chronologically and I was like, what key songs had a big impact in my life? And it's kind of key moments and key stages of my life as opposed to like really sort of specific drum techniques or anything like that. It's just a moment in my life where a certain artist or a certain song had an effect on that stage of my career, you know?
Mm-hmm. So let's just hop into number 1. And so this one was from a VHS. So I'll be playing a YouTube video from this. And I think I found the right song from the 87 live tour, but it's the Invisible Touch tour. The artist is Genesis. The release year is 1987. The key track is the drum duet in Los Endos. And
Los
the drummers...
Endos, yeah, I say Los Endos, but who knows
Los
what
Endos,
it is.
yeah.
Yeah.
You sound cooler when you say it, so I'll go with that. And then the drummer is Phil Collins and Chester Thompson, because if people don't know, Phil, during this time, was the lead singer of Genesis. But take it away, and then we'll listen to a little bit of it. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, so like you say, Phil Collins ended up being the singer in Genesis with Peter Gabriel in it to begin with on vocals. And this was later on. And my mum and dad went to the concert. I think they went to the concert. They'll probably be like, after this, they'll probably be like, we didn't actually go. But as far as I remember, they went to the concert and they bought the VHS and they put it on at home and it was lying around at home. And I got into it and got into this drum duet and just thought it was really cool that masses and masses of people had gone to see this show. And I used to just put it on. I used to put the VHS on when no one was around. I'd put it on pretty much every day before school, and as soon as I got home from school, I'd put this same VHS on and just watch the drum duet. And I thought I had it down by about the age of 9. I thought I had it down completely until I learned about kind of like ghost strokes and that it wasn't just the accents that they were playing. But yeah, it's a great duet. It's kind of very musical. The way the toms sing and the kind of almost the harmony between the toms is amazing. And I just got hooked on it. And that's right back then when I was kind of like 8 or 9, just from that one thing, I kind of was like, well, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I want to do, you know? In my like old toys, I had like 2 plastic saucepans and a plastic dustbin. And that was what I started playing on. That was what I started learning these drum parts on. And then I got given a family friend gave me like an old 60s Trixon drum kit, which got set up in it was a Trixon Luxus 60s kit in blue. Shout out to Andy Gregson who gave us that kit, and that it initially got set up in our lounge, and then it was way too loud, so got set up in the garage. We had a swing in our garden. We had this like rubber mat that lived under the swing, and it was like at least half an inch thick, this rubber mat. And the drums were so noisy that all I could do was really look at them. We lived in quite a sort of small neighborhood, and I wasn't really allowed to play them ever because they were so noisy. So I pulled this like mat from under the swing one day and drew around the drums and kind of like cut circles in this rubber mat and put one on each drum, because the drum pads and drum practice pads and stuff like that didn't really exist then, you know. But they were like, yeah, like half an inch thick pieces of rubber. So no response from the drum kit whatsoever. But that was what I started on in the garage.
And for everyone listening, this is on YouTube, and I mean, they look so cool. The kits are awesome, so go check this out as well. Number 2, the album is Who's Next. The artist is The Who. The release year is 1971. The key track is Won't Get Fooled Again. And again, listen to the whole record, but I via the form required you to pick one. And the drummer is Keith Moon. So take it away, and then we'll listen to some Won't Get Fooled Again.
Yeah, so it wasn't easy to choose a specific Who track, but Keith Moon definitely had an influence on the kind of early stages of my playing. He's so sort of flamboyant in his approach to drums. It's like in a lot of the songs, he's often the biggest voice. You know, he's often saying the most out of everybody. And I kind of, at an early age, thought that was what you were supposed to do, you know, and was quite flamboyant myself in my playing. And this track in particular, I remember my parents had like loads and loads of vinyl. They had loads of records, and I always remember my dad would put this on, and we'd lay down on the floor, both like on our front, and just lay down in front of the speakers and turn it as loud as we could get away with, and just sit and listen to these tracks. And I specifically remember us doing it with this, and him telling me the story of like, or his version of the story in what goes on in the song, so lyrically. But Keith's vocabulary and his kind of movement around the kit and his fill ideas, they've all kind of stuck with me right through till now. And on the gig I'm on at the moment, I'm playing with a guy called Louis Tomlinson. We've kind of taken some bits from The Who and shoehorned them into some of the songs on this tour. So
Hell yeah.
we've got kind of a small bit of Baba O'Reilly, and then I'm kind of playing elements of this tune we're about to hear within one of the One Direction songs that we play. So
Hell
I've
yeah.
kind of sort of fused the original One Direction tune with a bit of The Who and kind of made our own version of it.
And you've also produced some songs for Louis, right?
That's right, yeah. So he's just he's just released a live album this week. We recorded every single show that we've done, which in terms of data was quite a lot.
Quite a lot.
Yeah. I kind of just went through every show and constructed this record where each track was from a different location around the world, and then kind of fused it all together to make it feel like one big concert. It's kind of a seamless album, but everywhere's different, different place around the world. Yeah, so did that, and then did his last single as well, which came out as part of a DVD release, like a remake of one of his songs. So yeah, bit of production in there for good measure, as well as the other bits.
I mean, he's so busy, but he's so in the pocket. He's so clean.
Yeah.
It's
and
insane.
so musical as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is very busy. You can tell he just would never play the same thing twice. It's just whatever's coming out of him, flowing out of him that day is what it is. And you can tell that that's what happened on that recording as well.
Yeah. And it's funny, you were talking about how he's the loudest voice. The Who is also interesting too, because then it goes like Keith, and then the bass player is essentially the lead guitarist in that band. He's always just moving around and has those riffs that are front and center, and it's so cool.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said for that. I think they're in a league of their own on that front. But yeah, Keith Moon is definitely a hero. It was a tough one because I didn't choose in terms of my childhood. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but the biggest impact on my drumming as a child was probably John Bonham and Led Zeppelin. But in terms of key songs that I remember in my history, these other ones kind of outshine. Well, don't outshine Bonham, but they're more key to my life, But I would definitely say that Bonham and Moon were the two biggest influences in my early drumming. And I kind of feel like I've gone full circle with it all. I kind of studied and did all these different genres and kind of tried to make sure I knew all these different things, different styles for versatility and being a hired gun, and I've gone full circle with it all in that I kind of feel like this is the style that I want to play. This is the style that I am. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's taken a while to get there, but I kind of feel like that's definitely the case.
All right, number 3, and this Lee Harris does not get brought up enough. I think the only other person to bring him up was Jason McGurr. So you're in
That
good
was
company.
it. I knew someone else had brought it up, but I couldn't remember who it was. Yeah, Jason did. Yeah.
Yeah. So the album is Color of Spring. The artist is Talk Talk. Release year is 1986. The key track is Give It Up, and like I just said, the drummer's Lee Harris. And I know so little about Lee, so take it away and maybe talk a little bit about Lee if you have some info on him. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah. So Talk Talk for me is another another band from that same era in my childhood that the records were lying around and got put on a lot, and it kind of got ingrained into me, you know. And I kind of feel like initially they were the songs that were on in my household, so I became very familiar with them. But it's not until later years that I really realized how kind of intelligently put together it all is, and the musical dexterity in there. So it's as much about the kind of production, the musicianship, and the ideas of Mark Hollis than Lee. You know, it's kind of the drums, particularly on this track. This was a lesson in the opposite to Keith Moon. So having a pocket, sitting there and just holding it down and kind of letting the music around you speak for itself. At the time, I was practicing this in the garage, and the reason I particularly was drawn to this one, looking back, is I remember the kick drum pattern being quite difficult, having not had any lessons at the time, and I was probably about 10, something like that. I couldn't do it, you know, so I could play like boom, cut, boom, boom, cut, but I couldn't play boom, cut, boom, boom, cut, boom. And so I just spent a day on it. I just spent a day on it at a really young age, and just kind of tried to work on the groove and make it sit and make it much more playable. I remember that day of doing it, and then by the end of the day, kind of having it together. And the whole song doesn't really move. It stays on the same groove all the way through. But you now, looking back on it with a sort of wider outlook and a sort of greater knowledge, it's now as much about the production for me. And you kind of can hear where the snare is being hit, and how the snare drum, the sort of timbre of the snare drum changes depending on where he hits it throughout the song. There's some really interesting fills as well, but because the drums stay mostly the same throughout, your attention's drawn to other things, you know, the timbre of the drum kit, the depth of the sound in terms of like dry sounds, and then like a really reverby piano, or where they're placed in the stereo field. There's so much going on this whole record. But yeah, looking at this tune in particular is really interesting when you zoom out, I think.
Yeah, so cool, man.
Very cool, yeah. Some session greats on there. Don't ask me who they are, but there is.
Okay. I trust you. That sounds like there were.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably my desert island record, I would say, is Colour of Spring. If I'm on a flight somewhere and I don't want to necessarily think about music, you know, you kind of have stuff where you just dissect what you're listening to. These records now are kind of the opposite for me. I just put them on to relax. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So yeah, great record.
I'm trying to think which one of those. I mean, maybe In Rainbows is that for me?
Well, we're going there next. Yeah.
All right. So number 4, The album is a different record by Radiohead, but it's The Bends. The artist is Radiohead. Release year is 1995. Key track is High and Dry, and Phil Selway, the GOAT. So, take it away.
The GOAT. So I grew up in a village called Grove, which was Grove and Wantage. Wantage was the town and Grove was the village, and they were kind of right next to each other. And the next town on from Wantage was Abingdon, which is where Radiohead grew up. They all went to Abingdon School. So it was kind of like, not very far. They were all a bit older than me and kind of in the generation after me in terms of like bands and stuff. But there was this thriving music scene in Oxford at the time, and there was one main street in Oxford called Cowley Road, which had loads of venues all down one street, and I had to wait until I was old enough to be allowed to go there. But once I was old enough, like to be allowed to go into Oxford at night, I would go to all these venues, and I kind of made friends with some of the people that were promoting the shows, and they could tell that I was a bit of a drum nerd, but not too much of a punisher, for want of a better term, could kind of like hang out and not be annoying. And they would let me come down to all the shows early. So I would leave school. I'd usually leave school early, get on the bus straight from school, go into town and make it in time, go into Oxford, make it in time for sound check. Yeah, all these venues, the Bullingdon, the Zodiac, which ended up becoming the O2 Academy, the Point, which was, I'm pretty sure Radiohead played there a couple of times, the Elm Tree, which was just like a pub. And then you also had like the Jericho, which is the famous Radiohead one where they were originally called On a Friday, and they changed their name to Radiohead.
I didn't know that. On a Friday.
Yeah, on a Friday. Yeah, so Oxford has a big place in my heart in terms of my upbringing. And I know you and Gunnar, you talked about Phil a couple of weeks back, and he talked about the Morning Bell track. Mm-hmm. As far as I know, and I might be wrong, I think that was recorded at South Park. Some keen Radiohead fan will probably tell me I'm wrong, but as far as I know, it was recorded at South Park, and South Park was kind of at one end of Cowley Road, just this massive park, and they kind of did this great big concert in 2001, and everybody went except me because I forgot to buy tickets. But yeah, so that was from that. But yeah, in terms of Radiohead albums, it's between OK Computer and In Rainbows in terms of records. Mm-hmm. As a complete piece, I think probably In Rainbows just wins, and for me that's kind of, it's just on the sonics of it all, the production, the production ideas. I always feel like Radiohead are like 10, 15 years ahead of everyone else. You go back to a Radiohead record 15 years later and you're like, oh, that's what they were doing. Mm-hmm. I get it now, But I wanted to talk about this record in terms of my upbringing and my life. I was on the road in a splitter van, diving down the motorway with a band that I was in. It was about 2007, I think. It was pretty late at night. We'd just finished a show. It was about 11:30, 12, something like that. And my dad called me and he was like, I wanted to let you know that your cousin has passed away in a motorcycle accident. And he was basically in a motorcycle race, and something didn't go very well, and he didn't make it. And this was his favorite, I believe, his favorite song, and it was the song that was played at his funeral. And that whole situation, being on the road at the time, and I remember we kind of pulled over, and I just sort of sat on the side of the road and thought things through a little bit. It's that whole situation rocked my family and my wider family, and it's kind of had an impact on my viewpoint with what I'm doing with drums as an instrument and my life in general. I've kind of made the decision from then on to kind of take risks and kind of, if you're at a fork in the road, kind of always take the more adventurous route and kind of live for experiences. So this record, kind of being Radiohead, being part of the Oxford music scene, it ties into that, but it also has a very sort of special place in my heart for remembering my cousin who I looked up to and who was a big part of my whole family, a big character in my family. Yeah, so that's why I chose this one. It's instantly recognizable, and it will always take me by surprise. I'll be in a really busy bar, somewhere in the world, and it will come on. And the way it was recorded, the first thing you hear is the drums, and the first thing you hear is the room that the drums were recorded in, and I can recognize it from the first kick and cymbal hit, and it just takes me out of the place I'm in and makes me think of my family straight away within seconds. So I kind of couldn't. I wasn't totally sure if I wanted to talk about this one, but I think in terms of, the whole point of this is songs or musicians that have influenced your drumming, and this has probably had the greatest influence on my drumming, despite it not being through, specific drum nerdery.
Mm-hmm.
So let's give it a listen. Big wide open kick drum.
Wide open, yes.
Jumps in a week, but you think that's pretty clever, don't you, boy? Flying on your motorcycle, watching all the ground beneath you drop. You kill yourself for recognition, kill yourself to never ever stop. You broke another mirror, you're turning into something you are not. Don't leave me high, don't leave me dry, don't leave me high, don't leave me dry.
Well, I'm sorry to hear about all that, but again, it's a reminder of how beautiful music is and how powerful it is and how phonographic it can be in your memory, and it's beautiful in that way. But number 5, the album's Puzzle by Biffy Clyro, and the release year's 2007. The key track Saturday Superhouse, and drummers Ben Johnston. So I am going into this totally blank. I have heard Biffy Clyro.
I kind of hoped you wouldn't know it. Not from well, I know this band and you don't, but kind of
I know what you mean.
But yeah, I got to this point and I'd already done 4 songs, and a lot of them were from my childhood or teens. I feel like I'm going to need to come back and do another 5, to be honest,
please,
mate.
Please.
We're only up to like age 16 or something, but whatever. I kind of thought about, I touched on it a little bit, but where I'm at in terms of realizing who I am as a drummer and what my sound is, and I'm kind of now looking at the sort of modern rock influences, be it like Josh Freese, a big fan of Elan Rubin, Abe, Taylor Hawkins, rest in peace, John Theodore. It's all kind of like heavy hitters that play with quite a lot of flair, but also with a lot of precision. That's kind of what I've come to realize is where I land and what my real passion is in terms of playing. And I looked through all the songs that I'd chosen so far, and I realized they were all British. So I was going to choose something with Josh on or something with Taylor on, because they've had such a huge influence on my playing in terms of like vocabulary and just sound, choices of fills, that kind of thing. And then I remembered that there's a lot of parallels between Ben Johnston and Taylor Hawkins playing in terms of their fill choices. Their vocabulary is quite similar, and I realized they've both had quite a big impact on my playing. So Biffy Clyro are a Scottish trio, and Ben Johnston is the drummer. He's got his twin brother on bass, James Johnson, and then Simon Neil is on vocals. And they've released a lot of albums. They've released 9 albums, and I was kind of like,
wow,
trying to choose between the really early stuff on Black and Sky. There's a track called 57, which was the song that I got into quite early on in their career. It was like they released that record in 2002. I think I went to Reading Festival. It was either 2003 or 2005. And I remember being late to see them and running from the campsite to the main stage to get to see this tune. And they just started it as I was like running into the arena. Yeah, it was either between that one, 57, or Puzzle, which Saturday Superhouse is on. And Puzzle was one of those records where it was just on constantly. It was I was studying at a place called Drum Tech in London, which was kind of like, I guess it's like a Berkeley or a Musicians Institute or something. I don't know the specifics of what those places were like over here, but this was kind of a similar place. It was a small school, and they did like a degree course and stuff. So I did that for like 4 years. And whenever I'd come home for the weekend, my dad would have Biffy Clyro on in the car on CD. You know, it was like one of those days where you had like 6 options of a CD of like what you could have in the car, a CD changer, and you'd never really change them. You'd have the same 6 records on for like a year or something.
Yep.
So this was always on. So this again brings back fond memories. So great band. They've been around for a long time. I don't know how much they've done over here, but British people are very fond of Biffy. Mon the Biff is what everybody says. That's the phrase.
Okay.
Yeah, give it a listen.
There you go. Saturday Superhouse.
I'll be sitting on the left side, you'll be sitting on the right. Trying to share our problems, make everything alright. Then I see a darkness, you see the blinding light. We'll hold up in the corner moaning, can't you write the wrong line? If we don't know where we belong, it'll make no difference from where we started. Look out, kid, 'cause here it comes. You're not the lucky ones.
One thing about Ben is he has his cymbals really tight on the stands. I've never really understood why he does that. Never understood why anybody. You don't do that, do you?
No, exactly. I'm like,
No.
oh, shit.
Digging myself into a hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does that. I've never understood why people would do that. But yeah, great drummer, great band. There's another drummer that I wanted to talk about actually in the UK. A guy called Gareth Groville, and he's playing in a band called Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes. And he once said to me in a bar, I think we were playing like a small gig in, my band was supporting his old band. I think it was Haunts. Old band was called Haunts. He once said to me, "Oh well, all I'm ever trying to do is write drum parts where non-drummers can air drum what I'm doing. So like it's just easily digestible and makes other people want to do the movements, want to do the air drumming." And that's all that stuck with me. That was like, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. He said that in a bar, and that's always stuck with me. On listening to this tune today, Saturday Superhouse, I kind of feel like it's that kind of tune when you know all the pushes. It's that kind of band, to be honest. You know all the pushes and the placement of all the fills and stuff. You end up air drumming. So if I can play any shows where or record on anything where non-drummers are air drumming to it, then I feel like my job is complete.
Yeah, sometimes you want to be surprised, and then sometimes you just want to listen to a part, and you're like, that's exactly what needs to happen. He's accenting all the right spots. Sometimes an easy A is an easy A.
Exactly. And when you kind of go searching for like different genres and different styles, and you like studying drums is not for everyone, and I can see both sides to the argument. But for me, when I was young, that's what I needed to do, because I could play loud rock drums and that was it, you know, and I needed to learn other skills, be it arranging, scoring strings, production, just touch and grace on the drum kit, so you're not playing like crazy loud all the time, you know. Turns out I've ended up playing pretty crazy loud again on this latest gig, but
you know, hey, you're getting paid to play loud.
It's fine. But yeah, being a hired gun and a session drummer and an MD is, as I'm sure the majority of people that do that come on this podcast say, it's all about playing for the song, playing for what the song needs, you know, and kind of just keeping your head down, I think. And there's a lot to be said for that, and knowing when to kind of sit up and play something of interest, and when not to. And usually it's don't. Do you know what I mean? Certainly in the pop world, as I said before, I'm playing with a guy called Louis, playing with Louis Tomlinson, and it's quite a fun gig at the moment because it's not. It's, to be honest, it's not that. It's kind of some pretty bold drumming, and it's kind of like a sort of rock band, not too dissimilar to something like this, something like Biffy or Foo Fighters or something like that. You know, that's kind of it's been really good to kind of go full circle with it all. You know.
Mm-hmm. Well, then the next gig you're gonna want to, you know, it's cyclical.
Yeah, it'll be a pocket gig, country gig, you know.
Which honestly, the older I get, not even the older I get, just I mean, the more experienced I get as a player, those are just as fun. The discipline is just as fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
sometimes
absolutely.
more because you have to focus more. But when it comes to your honorable mentions, you did kind of touch on Bonham, so I want to maybe shoot to the next one, which is a drummer that I mean, I assume since I don't know it, no one knows it, but it's a drummer I've never heard of, which doesn't matter. But it's Sixth.
Sixth, yeah.
Sixth, yeah. It's Sikth, and it's Dan the Lord Ford, which is
Dan
awesome.
Ford, yeah. But his nickname was Dan the Lord Ford. We kind of didn't touch on this kind of era of my playing, but when I was studying, I went through the whole kind of metal phase, double pedal phase, all of that stuff, and playing as fast as you possibly can, as complicated as you possibly can. And that was kind of all going on at the same time as Radiohead. It took me a while to calm down, I think, in my playing. Same as I'm sure a lot of people have said, you know, I think Neil Daniels said the same kind of thing. His thing was Zappa, and took him a while to work it out. And it was exactly the same for me. And this was the song that I think this was the era that was like the most extreme of that. And I was kind of like scoring out all the drum patterns. I always say scoring out. Most people say charting out. Yeah, charting it all out, and kind of trying to get every single hit down. And I probably haven't listened to it since. And I just thought it was great it was a great kind of like snapshot of that era when I was doing all that stuff, and kind of going back to the MDing pop thing, you soon realize that stuff just doesn't matter, you know. I mean, it's great. I mean, good for them, and great that, you know, it's a great record. Good guys, and I know several of them personally. But in terms of what I want to do and the pop thing and being the hired gun, that stuff is just like never used. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I thought it would be interesting because, again, certainly over here, certainly in the US, I'm not sure how well known they are.
I mean, I'm not maybe the barometer of what's popular with metal music, but I'd never heard of them. But yeah, this is the song "Skies of Millennium Night" from the album "The Trees Are Dead and Dried Out. Wait for Something Wild." Came out in 2003 from Sixth. So yeah, let's.
I chose this one because the vocals are like the least brutal on this one. Some of the subjects are pretty brutal. So I chose this one for try and keep it PG. Yeah.
Sure. All right, here we go.
Here come the vocals.
Wow, that's amazing drumming. Jeez.
Yeah, really cool. That was a sort of era for me doing all that stuff. And meanwhile, you've got like Radiohead, Supergrass, Foals, all those sorts of bands just being amazing in Oxford. But I'm just at home listening to this stuff. So it took me a while to work it all out and then get more into those bands. But yeah, I thought it would be worth mentioning because a great band.
Yeah,
really interesting.
And then I did want to play the last one, which is a Santana performance from Woodstock of Soul Sacrifice with Michael Shreve on drums. And apparently he was 20 during this performance. So, yeah, how'd this record come into your life?
Again, this was another, I should have mentioned this one earlier, but this was like another childhood one. So there was a guy at the end of my street who played guitar, and we kind of like joined forces, and we would practice in my garage. A guy called Mikey. He's now in a band called Skindred.
It's a great name.
Yeah, great name, great band. I went over to his house. He was a bit older than me. A lot of my friends were I was like the little drummer boy, and everyone else was kind of like 2 or 3 years older than me. And I would like sneak out of school and go and play gigs and things at like, I think my first gigs were like 12, and then started gigging properly at weekends at like 14 and like playing pubs and stuff. They would come and pick me up, and then we'd go and play shows. And I went over to his house, and I was probably about, I want to say 13, and they put the Woodstock video on, and we watched the whole of Woodstock. And this was the performance. Again, this was pretty early days, and this was the performance where I was just like, whoa, that's what I want to do, you know. And I just knew from a really young age that was what I wanted to do. And I didn't really understand what he was doing and how, you know, all the sort of 6-stroke roll bass stuff that he's doing, and he's playing traditional grip, which I at the time I was just like, I don't understand how he's doing that. It had a massive influence on me, and who knows what they'd all taken, but like the performance is absolutely wild.
A lot. The answer is probably a lot of
whatever it was a lot. Yeah, but yeah, great performance, and yeah, had a massive impact on just sort of solidifying that and me knowing that was what I wanted to do, you know.
Hell yeah. Wow, so cool. Yeah. I need to sit down and actually watch this whole performance.
Yeah, you should, yeah. But that's my favorite bit from the whole of Woodstock.
Well, Steve, that's your big fat a bunch. But
Yeah.
Before we go, I know this is most people's least favorite part, but if you want to let people know what's going on with you, I mean, granted, people might be listening to this 5 years from now, but yeah, how can people find you? And then I'll let you go.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. My Instagram's Steve_Durham. I've kind of often not put a huge amount online, so there's not loads on YouTube. There's not loads. I don't have a website or anything, but I do have an Instagram. You can find a lot of my stuff there.
Mm-hmm. Great drumming on there.
Yeah, check it out.
Hell yeah, dude. Well, that's it, man. That's the show. All right, this week's big fat favorite is from Liberty DeVito, and he is most known for playing with Billy Joel. And this choice is him just talking about Dino Danelli and the impact that Dino had on Liberty's playing. So here's what Liberty had to say. When I first started playing, Ringo Starr was the king of the drum throne. When I first heard the Young Rascals, Dino Danelli pushed him right off the seat. The Rascals were the first band I'd ever seen play live, and when Dino played, I saw for the first time that a drummer could be as much of a focal point as the lead singer. He played to the song, and I once asked him how he came up with playing the conga drum on their #1 hit, Groovin'. He said the song's about sitting on the grass in a park with the sunshine, beautiful weather, and the one you love. He said he'd be playing a conga drum if he was there. He wouldn't bring a full drum set to the park. So I learned that whatever you choose to play, make sure it fits the story and the mood the writer is trying to capture. And let's just go ahead and play Groovin' by the Rascals.
On a Sunday afternoon, really couldn't get away too soon. I can't imagine anything that's avenue. Do it. Anything we like to do. There's always lots of things that we can see. We can be anyone we like to be. All those happy people we could meet just moving on a Sunday afternoon. Really couldn't get away too soon. No, 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 no. We'll keep on spending sunny days this way. We're gonna talk and laugh our time away.
And that's the show. If you're listening on a platform that allows ratings and reviews, do that. It helps more people find the show, so it'll get bigger and better, and hopefully I'll have a chance to sell out one day. But you'll be an OG listener that can brag to all your friends. Anyways, why don't you go and check us out at bigfatsnaredrum.com and follow us on all the socials. Just search for Big Fat Snare Drum and you will find us. The show is edited in part using Isotope RX Audio Editor. It's amazing, so go check that out at isotope.com. And thanks again to Gunnar Olsen for the theme music. Bye!